So here we are, my dear Alison Isaac. Welcome to this little segment, this little part of
Thank
my
you.
life.
It's a
Uh,
pleasure.
Alison Isaac, you are a teacher. You have been my friend. We worked together. We studied together. What are you up to now?
So now I'm doing a few things. So I'm back in Toronto. My main gig is like a government job, but I guess the more interesting things that I'm doing is I am working on a collection of short stories.
Nice.
So hopefully that will be finished before the end of this year. And then the other thing that I'm working on is I am not really launching, but I'm having fun with a platform called Global Narrative, which I created some years ago. And basically, the goal of Global Narrative is to celebrate writers of the African diaspora and to get people interested in books and reading and writing. And so that's the sort of passion project that I'm working on now.
That's great. I love that you are always involved with reading and writing, and that's beautiful.
I love
How
it.
many books do you have now? Like yours?
That that I've written.
Yep.
So just the one children's book called Kukumba. And then hopefully the second one will be this collection of short stories.
Nice.
I
Nice.
know you're a writer, so I'm gonna need your help to hold me accountable and to actually finish this manuscript.
Girl, I'm here. I'm here, and I'll help you with my crazy way of writing. But yes, I can. I can help you. So, Alison, we are here because I wanted to talk about teaching, like bilingual teachers, teaching another language, and native speaking teachers such as yourself, teaching your language. So, as you know, my native tongue is Spanish, and I teach English. But you, my friend, your native tongue is English and you teach English. You have taught here in Colombia, you are in Canada right now. But when you were here, like, okay, first of all, I want to know why it's for you, what does teaching mean to you before we start on the bilingual thing?
Teaching is not even giving, but like helping people think. I think essentially for me, that's what it is. Helping people think, helping people come to their own conclusions, ideas, perspectives on things. And that was something that I had to keep in mind as I was teaching children in Colombia.
Mhm.
I remember saying to my seventh graders at one point, like at some point, you're going to have ideas that are different from your parents. And you should, like, as you grow, as you get older, as you learn more, as you figure out who you are, you come into your own way of being and your own way of seeing the world. And that's what teaching is for me. It's not just like giving folks information. It's like helping them understand what to do with the information, helping that, giving them tools to like think through things and just kind of figure out the space, figure out the world. That's what it is for me.
It is not about like think as I am thinking. You have to,
Um,
it's, you develop yourself. You will
exactly.
get the
Exactly.
world.
And I think this is one of the challenges of teachers. It's like, okay, your students may disagree with you, and that's okay. Like as if they can explain why they disagree, I think you've done a great job. If they can defend their position and say, no, sorry, teacher, like I don't agree with you. I think it's this. I think this is a better way to do things. And I think that's great.
Yeah, that's yeah, that should be the
Right?
reason why we teach, so people can think, even if what they think maybe it's wrong or something, but if they can look for the information and find out and say, hey, I'm defending this because I know this, it's okay, it's okay. They might be not in the correct way, but in the correct path, or but they are trying to find it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my personal case, I love teaching because I didn't know back then that I have these different ways of getting information and the different ways of linking it inside my brain. So
Mm.
now when I teach, I am looking for that in my students. I am trying to
Ah.
find out, okay, how do you learn? There are
Right.
some people that tell me, no, I don't like videos. I love writing. No, I prefer coloring things. No, I have to have everything. Or so when you know how you learn
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
you know what distracts you, and you know if you can get to know yourself to that level, you are going to
yeah,
learn anything. But that point for me is really important because if I had known back then that I had this special way of thinking, it would have been so much easier. So
yeah.
I feel like, did I say it correctly? I should have, because
Absolutely. I was
oh,
just
thank
thinking,
you.
oh, her English is so good, like so
Thank you, my
ridiculous.
girl, please. So now that, okay, now let's go to Spanish. I want you to practice to your Spanish. Please tell me, how do
Brush
you
up.
feel? Yes, yeah. How do you feel? How did you feel back then when we worked together as a native speaking teacher in Colombia, teniendo todos estos niños caleños, ¿ve? Hablando a tu alrededor y tú enseñándoles inglés. How did that feel?
You know what's funny? Just last week, I was like, I'm losing my Spanish. I mean, I've been back in Canada for 4 years now. Um, but I really feel that it's like hard to pull out the words. And it made me kind of sad. And so like leading to your question, I loved hearing my students outside of the classroom because I tried to get them to speak in English as much as possible in the classroom because I know that that's what helps with fluency. But I loved picking up the little things. Like I always tell the story of, when I first moved to Cali, I would hear everyone saying like, ¿Qué más? ¿Qué más? And I'm like, not nothing, nothing more, pues, nah. Like, why are they asking me what more? And then you come to realize it's the way that they're saying, like, how are you? What's up? But
What's up? Yes.
I was like, ¿Qué más? Um, but my students would also teach me things, right? Like, oh, miss, like say this way and say that. And like I remember I actually asked a student, what is the difference between traer and llevar? Because I could not understand. And then finally a student was like, it has to do with the direction of the thing. And this was a fourth grader, like a 9-year-old,
Yep.
right? And I was just like, this is it's so good. And I finally got it. So I loved. Todavía me encanta el español, me gusta hablar en español, pero me da pena porque ahora, pues, me cuesta mucho hablar en español. Am, y yo sé que hablo con un acento, pues, de inglés, pero I try to keep it up when I can. I still have shyness, which is something I would say, folks, if you are trying to learn a language, you got to get over yourself because the quickest way to learn a language is to just make all of the mistakes. You just vomit out the language. You just.
Absolutely. Yes. And
Um,
that is something important. I have many students that are afraid of talking because they maybe they what if I make a mistake? What if I say something? What if, and it has to do with two things. So I'm going to tell you this in Spanish. Muchas personas tienen miedo de hablar en otro idioma, sea el que sea que estén aprendiendo. En este caso, hablando de inglés. Tienen
your
miedo
accent
de
in Spanish.
Oh, vaya, esta no es la forma en la que hablo en la vida real. Pero muchas personas tienen miedo de que otras personas se burlen, que se burlen abiertamente o peor aún, que se burlen en silencio y nunca les digan cuántos se están burlando, porque no suena perfecto, porque se equivocó, porque... Y la verdad es que yo pienso que no sé, yo me equivoco hablando español. A veces estoy hablando y no me daba cuenta lo mucho que me equivocaba en español hasta que mi hija empezó a burlarse, pero pues en
Ah,
confianza, en la confianza ay, pero ¿qué es eso? ¿Qué es esa palabra? Y nos reímos. Pero si todo el tiempo tengo miedo de equivocarme,
yeah,
no lo voy a
yeah.
lograr. Do you have anybody to practice your Spanish with right there in Canada?
Yes, of course. I have a good friend, funny enough, her family is caleña. And she was born and raised here, but she also spent some time in Cali while I was there. I have a great, Venezuelan friend. I have you. I have my other good friend, Brenda. I mean, you guys are not here, but of course, there's ways to communicate. So of course, like we have neighbors who are Colombian,
Nice.
and
And
yeah,
you go
it's
there to eat empanadas with them?
and they come here, and we're, they're just yeah, lovely people. There's another woman who's in the building. She's Mexican. A few, so there are so many opportunities to practice, to be honest. And what you said, the thing about making fun, I want to say to your students is that especially with English, most of us don't care, right? Like English has really become this international language. There are so many ways to speak English. Even as a so-called native speaker, you have a British accent, you have an American accent, you have a Canadian accent, you have a Caribbean accent, you know?
Yep.
There's just so many ways. So it doesn't matter. We don't care. Like, just
Of
speak.
course. And I tell
Yeah.
them the same. When any person, any foreign person comes to our city and they do not speak Spanish correctly, everybody's so excited, like, ay,
Yes.
venga, le ayudo, venga, dígame.
Mm,
We are friendly,
yeah.
but we among each other sometimes are so rude, so mean, because I
Mhm.
speak better English than you. Oh,
Uh,
you confused the past with the present. Oh, and it is like I feel those people who feel better making other people feel bad. That doesn't have to do with the language or the learning. I feel it has to do with
mm,
themselves. And
yeah.
maybe it was really difficult for them to learn the language, so they feel that if somebody else learns, it's going to be like they are going to be right there. It's something that goes within their minds and their hearts that doesn't have to do with you and your mistakes or not. If you do anything, they are going to try to make you to
Yeah.
put you down.
Can I ask you a question about your language learning?
Talk to me.
Because
Yep.
I think you've always heard me say that your English is excellent. I think it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Um,
Thank you. I'm
truly.
blushed.
No, there's like maybe two or three people in my life that I've met who speak English fluently, and they're like, I mean, you've left Colombia, but they've never left, the country that they're from, and somehow they speak English fluently. So for you, I want to know, or maybe your audience wants to know, like, how did you get to this point of speaking English so unbelievably well?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the compliment. I take it. And that's part of what I told you about my strange way of learning because I learn from everything. So
Mm,
back in the day, I was a little girl and I tried to understand those little signs that appear in the cartoons or TV shows
yeah,
and
yeah,
and I tried to understand why two words meant a big idea and it's because the translation was bad, but I didn't know. So so I started learning like my favorite movie back in the day was Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And I
okay.
used to watch VCR over and over and over. And I watched it so much that I started listening and not paying attention to the subtitles. So I
Mm,
knew what was coming and I knew how to say it. So
so
I basically learned the movie.
yeah,
At the same time, I was into Guns N' Roses, you know, 1991, 1992. And back in the day, how do you call the acetatos? The big discs, the black ones, the
records?
music, yeah, the records. Yes, because records. Yeah, the acetatos because of the material. Anyways, the
Uh,
records,
uh-huh.
LPs, LP because of the speed or something like that. So the records came with the lyrics. So I
Yeah.
took that big piece of paper and I took a dictionary and I
Hey.
started translating each like sentence or ideas, words. And okay, so I try to figure out their meaning because there are so many sayings that you don't know how to say unless you live there. For example, uh, sometimes I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. And I translated like, a veces siento que estoy pegándole a un caballo muerto. My God, what is this? So then within
Totally.
time, I
Yeah.
understood it was like fighting a lost cause.
Yes.
That's like an expression. But back then I was doing that and watching Terminator and translating things. And I just started listening more than translating. So listen and listen and listen. And I'm telling you 1992, 1994, I was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And like 3 weeks ago, I was like in Netflix watching things like Terminator 2. I know it still. I still know everything. I still know the tones and the everything. So that was the way music, video games, movies. I learned a lot of my English for that.
Do you have any memories of learning how to say something, maybe phonetically, just based on the sound, and then a day comes and you realize what you were saying? Do you have any
Oh,
memories of that?
like when I heard something and I realized that I understand.
Yeah, like maybe you were watching Terminator and you just knew the sounds, so you could reproduce them, but you didn't fully understand what you were saying. And then one day you were like, oh shit, I
Oh,
understand now.
it happened. No, but it wasn't with Terminator because it had the subtitles. It happened with Guns N' Roses 1991 Tokyo concert.
Love it.
I used to watch that. I was a person like my special beautiful HDA ADH.
ADHD.
Oh
Uh-huh.
gosh, I don't know how to say it. I say it all the time, and right now
Lots
I
of
forgot.
letters.
ADHD brain used to repeat and repeat and repeat. So I watched the Tokyo concert a lot of times, and I was like, there was a part that he was talking, and I knew the tones, I knew but I couldn't understand what was he saying. I was like, what is
Mm,
this? I want to understand. And within time, I
right.
understood what was the thing. So now I hear it and I like it's so clear. But back then it was just sounds that became little words. I could catch some words and
Yeah.
then I got the meaning of it.
Yeah. I had a similar experience with music, with Ruben Blades or Ruben Blades,
Mhm.
a high school teacher of mine who knew I was really into Spanish. She was lovely. She gave me a cassette with like different, music in a
Ooh,
cassette.
cassette girl. Yes, back in the day. Mhm. Yeah.
And there was, yeah, this song, and I didn't know who he was at the time, but the more I listened to it, I would start singing along because it's just sounds and it's, melodic. And then I started to pick up on little things and I realized he was telling a story. And then finally one day was like, oh, I think I'm getting, and you know what else? Feliz Navidad, the song by what's his name? Jose Feliciano.
Jose Feliciano, yeah.
That was another one. Like one day I heard it on the radio and I was like, oh, I understand it now.
Girl, the moment you understand something, mine was I was doing some things. I don't remember. I was studying Latin because my dad had a book, an old ancient book of
Being
Latin,
Latin.
and I
I
was
know.
trying to figure out because I love languages. I just want to understand people when they talk to me. So I was there like writing a note, trying to understand because it's so difficult. And the radio was on, and Brian Adams, of course, Brian Adams,
Yeah.
Canadian treasure, eh,
Him and
and
Celine.
and it was Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman? The soundtrack of Don Juan de Marco. So I was there, and when you love a woman, you tell her that she. I was like, wait. So I stopped. I didn't even move a muscle. I stood there because I felt that if I moved, it was going to go. So I listened to it and I understand the whole song the first time I heard it. And I was like, gosh, I know English. Now, like this was like 4 years after starting with the translation of Guns N' Roses song. So it was,
Thing.
and this is something I want to ask you about. People think, oh yeah, in 6 months I'm going to be talking English, speaking and understanding everything. Do you think that is it possible for a person like in 6 months not being in an English speaking environment? For example, I think 6 months, if you are all the time listening to English, trying and learning, you might do it because you are living there. But if you are here and you want to have 1, 2 classes a week in 6 months, you are going to do it perfectly, fluently. What do you think about that? Because that's a promise some people make.
Yeah, I think it's a very unrealistic expectation. I think something someone told me once is that there's levels to fluency, right? So maybe, after a few months, you can go into a store and you could buy groceries, right? Theoretically speaking, if you were an English speaking country. Maybe, you're doing okay in terms of small talk or basic vocabulary or even specialized vocabulary based on whatever it is that, you're learning. Maybe you're a student, maybe you work in a particular industry, whatever. But to be like 100, who is 100% fluent in anything? Like you were saying earlier, even in Spanish, you're making errors, even in
Yep,
English, making errors. Um, you'll make errors, right? But I think you could get to I mean, depending on where you start, depending on how much work you put in, because 1 to 2 classes a week ain't gonna do it if you are not also practicing and reading and listening and
absolutely.
doing all the other things. So I would say that, yeah, folks need to just like manage their expectations, right? If you work at something consistently, obviously you're going to get better at it. It just
Yep.
might not be as quickly as you expect.
And I feel that comparing one person with another, well, it has to do with a lot of factors. Let's say two
Yeah.
people, let's take two twins and place them in a, so maybe both are studying the same amount of hours, maybe both are trying to do their best, but one of them learns in a way and the other learns in another. So you put two different people learning the same with the same method, they are not going to learn at the same rate because their brains don't get the information as like the same way.
Yeah.
So maybe that, oh, my cousin did it, and yeah, but your cousin is a different person, and
Your cousin
maybe
is your cousin.
that way is the best way for them, but it's not the best way for you. So I feel
Yeah.
that we need to people need to know what's the best way they learn. How do you,
Yes.
or that's something else? And no, it's because I'm too old. I'm too old to learn a new language, and I feel that
I
is
don't
not an
think that's a
excuse.
thing. Yeah, I don't think that's a thing either. And I think you're right when you say it depends on the person. It depends on their learning style. It depends on their interests. For example, if someone sat you and me down and they were like, we're going to learn German, I bet you I'm never going to learn German, right? I feel like
German
you
is
might,
wunderbar, my
yeah,
friend. I love it.
not my thing, right?
But
Um,
or same way French. I don't like French, and you like French.
and I'm trying to learn French, right? And I have many reasons why I'm trying to learn French. So I think also the reason behind it also matters, right? Like
Yep.
if all the music that you like is in Spanish, then you would probably learn Spanish more quickly than someone who was learning it for school and just for school, for example, or just learning it for
Or
their
for a
job
test.
or a test or
Uh,
whatever. And yeah,
Test-driven
like knowing
learning.
and yeah, knowing yourself and knowing how you learn best, I think is really important. And it's something I think that's a process.
Yeah.
As you try different things, you kind of figure out what works for you. Or maybe you're a hardhead like me, and you know what works for you, but you're not doing it. And then you're like, why am I learning French? Oh, maybe I should listen to music more, which is what I did with Spanish. Maybe I should watch, Netflix series that I'm interested in, just like
Yeah.
I did with, you know what I mean? Like all
Yeah,
these
that's
sorts of
what I
things.
did.
So,
The reason why I started, I wanted to learn German because I felt that, okay, I learned English. What's the next thing? So
mm,
it's not that I learned English. I finished the course. And what else can I do? Okay, I want to learn German. It's kind of similar. It's not the same, of course.
yeah,
It's not the same. And this new band,
yeah,
Rammstein, is here. I want to know what they're saying. So it was back Guns N' Roses all over again, but with Rammstein. And that was my interest. And the day, that was another thing. I never finished my German course. I talk German as a toddler. I can't I get some ideas. But the day I was in Austria and I was there at the park, the kids were playing and we were there sitting, and then a woman next to me, another woman approached her and said, hey, in German, hi, excuse me, I can see it's a beautiful scarf you have. Where did you buy it? The other one said, oh, thank you so much. This was a gift. I don't know where the person bought it. Oh, it's a shame because it's really beautiful. I would like to have one. And I was like, oh, am I gossiping in German? And there were so many small words like scarf, gift, thank you. And
yeah,
it was a simple conversation. And I never finished. I would like to learn again, like finish it. But what I'm saying is what you like I was just rephrasing what you said. There are levels. And
yeah,
I am good to buy things, number things, name things, understanding small talk. And well, you can if that's your goal, you can do it. But if your goal is to go and talk about international marketing at a conference, well, you have to go a little bit more and study a little bit more.
absolutely, absolutely. As as a teacher of both English and Spanish, do you find that the concerns of your students are very similar, or do you find that, oh, like with students learning Spanish, they seem to be concerned about grammar more, and with students learning English, they're
Let's
concerned about accent or
Girl, let's talk about grammar. People
ooh,
feel let's talk about grammar. People feel that if they don't know grammar, they don't know the language. And
yeah,
and like I feel like all students, I don't know if it happened to you too, but they say like, "Oh, I can speak, but I'm not good at grammar, so I don't know it." I'm like, "Are you gonna teach this?" No. Okay, so you don't need the grammar. Like you need to know how to do things, but you don't need to know like, "Oh, this is I don't know, the prefix, the suffix, this is the you need to
yeah,
understand
yeah,
it and communicate. So I feel everybody is concerned about grammar. But when you were little, you were not thinking about grammar. You were thinking of communicate with your parents and friends.
yeah.
How's your
Yeah.
experience with Spanish grammar is a thing. Talk to me about that.
You know what, actually? I How do I feel about so one, I kind of like grammar. Like I find it interesting understanding how a language works and even like spellings in English, like understanding that English is kind of a mashup of different languages. And that's why sometimes, this vowel sounds this way, but then it sounds different when you put it with, another bunch of letters. And so to
Yeah.
me, this is very interesting. Um, and Spanish grammar, it wasn't, I didn't find it super difficult. Um, and I was also one of those students who like wanted to get it right and felt bad if I didn't get it right. And then I went to places like Mexico and Ecuador and Colombia, and I realized people just really didn't care. You know, they they didn't care, but also you learn that in context, when native speakers are speaking, they're even they themselves, like they're not thinking about, oh, okay, so if I start the sentence this way, then the verb needs to be conjugated this way. They just say it the way that it comes out, and
Yep,
nobody cares. You know, it's
of
just
course.
we're just talking. The point is, I'm telling you about some juicy gossip. The point is not
Yeah,
whether or not, you know, I'm using the right verb tense. And that's it. I think you're right. I think we are just so focused on grammar at the very beginning of learning a language. And I think that can sometimes be a roadblock because when you're trying to memorize all these rules and you can't memorize them, you're just like, I'm never going to learn a language. That's me in French. I'm just like, yo, they
absolutely.
have an exception for everything. In French, anyway, that's another conversation. Love to my francophones.
And what about the cultural aspect? Whenever you like, I guess here in Cali, you learn about the oh, mija, and
Uh-huh.
that's it. That's it. And you absolutely know that means you are going to say, I'm not going to say anything about this because it's going to be problem, and it is all reduced to
Mhm.
so culturally
Yeah.
same thing. When I'm teaching my students, I tell them, look, I'm telling you the correct way. This is the grammatically correct way. But you can say like that. For example,
Yeah.
it is going to be difficult. It's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be hard. And it's not
Good.
grammatically correct, but it's
Yeah.
used.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, you want to talk. Do you want to talk? Do you want to communicate? I can tell you the correct way, and I want to show you the other way. And also, this other strange, absolutely weird way for us, but it's totally normal for the other people. It's like when they ask me things like, teacher, ¿y cómo digo, es que es picado, es que es muy picado? I'm like, okay, we have to translate this from Colombian caleño to Spanish and then find out in English
I love
because
it.
tan picado in Colombian Spanish is like como egocéntrico, como quiere aparentar más de lo que realmente es o tiene y
Mhm.
lo restriega en la cara a los demás. That is a whole concept that has nothing to do with chopping or biting, mosquito biting, picar or picar.
Yeah.
Nothing to do
Right.
with that. Nothing in
Yeah.
Spanish.
And
So
I think that's the fun part.
how would you say that, Tampicado, like in English? Like how would you express that somebody is like, is it
Like kind of full of themselves, like
maybe cocky?
conceited, cocky, or thinks they're all that. You know, they and with this, with the
Mm,
things you know,
yeah.
and it's the that cultural layer which I think makes language learning so fun. Like outside of the textbooks and the exercises, it's like understanding the
Mm, mm.
you know, and just
Yeah. That
yeah,
one, the
like
sassiness,
what
like
word?
these things.
Yeah,
Those are great. I love them too.
yeah, right. And it's like what word is mija? You know, like what word
Yeah.
is that?
It
You
would be
know,
like legally it would be mi hija,
yeah,
both words in one, mija, but it's not with your daughters. It's with
yeah,
everybody. So mija. Yeah,
right.
that's
It's just
beautiful.
like
Language is beautiful.
yes, yes, yeah.
So, my dear Allison, to wrap this up, which what can you what would be your advice for people that are trying to learn any new language, in this specific case, English, so they can feel better or they can find the best way of learning? What would be your advice?
A few things, and a few things that we've touched on. One, the sooner you could get over yourself, the better, right? Just accept that mistakes are going to happen. Nobody really cares except for you.
Mhm.
I would say think about the things that you love and try to do those in the language, right? So if I love reading, I might want to pick up a graphic novel in Spanish, in French. Um, if I love listening to music, I might want to go on to, Spotify, find the Latin pop playlist, the Francophone pop playlist,
Yep,
see what's
yep,
happening in the world. If I like watching the news, I might want to watch it in the language that I'm trying to learn.
yep,
And really, I think oftentimes, as we were saying, like we get focused on writing and grammar way too much, way too early. Like you could be speaking and having general conversations and not be a great writer, but that's also okay because in this language that you're trying to learn, you're probably going to be speaking it more than you're writing.
yep.
And so I would say practice, like find folks that will, kind of be the term that I heard is language parent, right? So you feel safe with them, you can talk,
Nice.
you can make all the mistakes and you can tell them, correct me or don't correct me. Let me just flow with it. Let me just practice. But I think that's probably a good place to start. And also you can learn the language. Like most people can learn the language. It just depends on, your method, how much work you're willing to put in, but you can learn it even when it feels like, you'd rather be doing something else.
I love that language parent. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it because people think they cannot make mistakes. But if you find that one person or two or three, how many they can be, that can guide you with love and understanding. And that's
Yeah.
something you can ask. Can you please, I'm going to talk to you in English. Can you correct me? And this is something that we have. Like, you can correct me anytime, so no problem. But people don't say it. And you should be able to say it. To say, hey, help me, correct me, or please don't correct me. I want to talk to you and I want to see if you understand. Beautiful. That's
Right?
great. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. I'm so
Yeah.
I'm so glad to have you as my English parent. You are mine.
I am really not your English parent. I am your peer. We just talk shit in English. I hope I can say like to
Yes,
me, you
please.
you are not an English learner. You are an English speaker, completely fluent. Like, yeah,
Thank you
no,
so
you're not an English
much.
learner.
Thank you so much. Anyways, I feel I am never going to stop learning anything. So
Yeah, that's a great attitude to have. Because there's always something new. Language is always changing too, right?
yeah, yeah, and in all this very demure, very mindful, I have to learn new things as everybody else.
Right? Yeah.
So, my dear Alison, this is the time we have. I really appreciate your presence here and muchas gracias, Doña Alison Isaac.
Con mucho gusto.
Y es un placer. Espero que podamos vernos más porque hay muchas más cosas que hablar.
Profe bilingüe.